My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. I'm only here to even the score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice is cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a belated episode of the United Ones podcast. It is episode number 52, and that means it's the last episode of this season. And we've got an exciting show for you next week to celebrate, not to mention that it's game week. So super excited about all of that. As a reminder, we are the only podcast that features a former UCF national champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous, yes, infamous rapper coming live to us remotely this week. So I don't know about his background game. Our resident influencer and IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF sports. And remember to like and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and check out 70 plus teams and conferences on the College Huddle. As a reminder, I moonlight on the Big 12 Huddle, 4th in Florida, which is about the Power Conference football in Florida. And we have a new stream during games that's going to be coming your way with another member of the squad. So without further ado, here's Nobra. Oh, wait, Nobra's not here this week, so I'm going to have to do the hair flip. Didn't work. Wasn't quite the bobblehead other people have, but my hair stays in place. So that being said, let's go ahead and bring in Ben Stout.
What's up, Ben? How's it going, Go? How's it going? It's light crew tonight, but we're going to hold it down for the rest of the gang.
Yeah, where's my hair flip, bro?
Oh, I don't have much hair to flip either.
Well, that's all right. That'll work. Give me the bobblehead game. That's fine. He's got his hat on this week, folks, for those of you at home. And last but not least, but always last, remotely, Josh Lazar.
Yeah, no bars today. I've been speaking all day while working, so my voice is shot. But I'll do my best to keep in the game, even though I think Roger and myself have been working somewhere near 12 plus hours today, maybe more. Ben, I'm hoping you only had a good 8-hour day or so of work. And I can't wait to talk about all the things that I missed while traveling all over this country.
Yeah, I didn't travel all over this country, but I've been all over Florida the past 3 days. So I will say this, some exciting news coming up that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk a little UCF football. Monday, there'll be a roster release. So excited about that. We'll get some camp information. Shaquem Griffin made an appearance at UCF. We've got some other college football related news that we're going to talk about. And some nights in the NFL, we're getting close to cut time, and we're going to do a little background on who we have in the NFL. UCF Hoops had some news this week, so I'm excited to talk about that. Ben should be excited too. I think Josh is going to give us his sometimes funny fact of the week. And guess what? We've got some other UCF sports that Alan does not watch, and apparently he's not here to watch this tonight either. So that's okay. We're here for you. Alan, unfortunately, had some child issues, meaning he had to take care of his little one this evening. So we'll be missing him. And as always lately, Trey Neal is knee-deep in another body.
Pause.
I don't know how to say that. But no, Trey Neal is doing his thing on his medical thing. For those of you that don't know, he was involved in the medical community, and he's currently going through a training regimen, which includes, supervising surgery. So super excited. We'll get him back here pretty soon. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit about camp. So a little devastating news came out today, courtesy, and this is new news, courtesy of John Walker's Instagram. It looks like he has an injury. We've been talking him up, excited about the defensive tackles this year, and it looks like John Walker, unfortunately, had an injury last week. It wasn't released until this Instagram came out. The UCF has a policy of kind of keeping it hush hush and letting the players talk about it if they want to. And he just showed a picture, and he had a knee brace on and a soft cast on his knee. What we are hearing is that it is a meniscus issue. We don't know how bad it is. We don't know if it's a tear. We can't confirm that it's a meniscus issue, but that's what the rumor is coming out of UCF. If it is a full tear, that means he will be out for the season. So we will get John Walker back next year. If not, if it's not a tear and they just have to scope it, it could be about 6 weeks, which means we could see him back this year about midway through the season. So, let's talk about the state of the D-line. I mean, last episode, we were talking about how lucky we were with the defense and having the ability to rotate defensive tackles. And we still have those folks that we talked about last week, right? Alexander being one. But I don't like to use that word, as Josh knows. I like and that's right. And we are down one lineman of that awesome twosome. So that means we still have Lee Hunter. We still have Ricky Barber, which he was injured most of last season, which is why John Walker, Matthew Alexander, and Lee Hunter, with Lee Hunter playing all of the snaps at defensive tackle. What do you guys think about this? What do you think the impacts are? Give me your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it may not be because of the talent that you just mentioned, especially Ricky Barber, Lee Hunter, that duo that we have. I mean, it may not be devastating to the defense, to our defense, but I gotta say, if we're not going to be able to see John Walker this season, just personally, I just feel like for Knight Nation in general, it's a disappointment because all indications, it seemed like John Walker was going to be like the main breakout player on defense this year. We just saw all the indications, his size, his talent, his pedigree. He got some run last year. He got some reps, as you talked about. He made good plays last year when he was in the games. He kind of had his feet underneath him, and then all of a sudden, not being able to move forward this season would just be, a big disappointment for us as fans, because we were really looking forward to him contributing and potentially breaking out this season. So I guess in my opinion, there's not necessarily panic from a UCF standpoint of like our defense is going to be so much worse now, but I think we are going to wonder how much better it could be.
Yeah, I think we talked about this just a week or two ago, where you have this defensive line that just so qualified that how can you put him on the second string? We talked about that recently, right. And the reality is that could have possibly been a possibility. Now, it's hurting depth, yes, but I still feel like as long as everyone keeps healthy, like Ben, and I agree with Ben, we're taking away depth that absolutely would be a starter in most other schools, in almost probably 100 of the 120 or so.
Let's
right?
be real. John Walker was heavily recruited by the University of Florida and would have been probably a starter this year if he had gone to Florida.
100%.
Assuming he didn't tear his meniscus there too. But, or let me not say that, if there wasn't an injury there too. But, that he is a big piece that we're going to be missing on that terrible twosome.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and that's if Napier didn't run him out of UF at that point. But he's with us. Hopefully, he'll heal well. We'll see him more than likely next season, or maybe late this season. I know those. If all these things seem to be true, that's anywhere between 8 weeks and 6 months, right? I'm assuming he will be out for the year, which is unfortunate, and I just hope he heals well and succeeds in the future. That's all.
Yeah, the most important part, obviously, is that whatever it is, that he heals from it properly. We wish him well. You never, yeah, it puts a little bit of a damper early in the season. And here's the thing, right? I think we jinxed ourselves because it's like, if you ever watch football and the announcer is like setting up a field goal and they're like, and he's 19 of 20 for the season from this distance, right? And then all of a sudden he shanks the kick, right? Now, unfortunately, we saw a lot of that with Boomer, but last season. But I feel like that was the case because we kept talking about how healthy we were coming out of camp, and then all of a sudden we had two guys out, and one of them being John Walker, starting defensive tackle. So, it's tough, but we do have depth behind him. We did lose another depth piece in the defensive tackle room, but we do have Ricky Barber back, so hopefully he doesn't have injury issues this year. I am knocking on whatever this is, particle board or whatever this desk is made out of.
That feels like wood. Some of this looks like real.
Yeah, that definitely looks like real wood from the 80s. But where are you at, by the way, Josh?
So undisclosed. No, I'm kidding. I'm up in Traverse City, Michigan, where the current temperature is 57 degrees, 60. We're at 60 degrees right now. It's so nice outside. I love coming up here. This is if you've never been there, you go. Traverse City, pay me. Don't do stuff in the Detroit airport. If you've never heard of Traverse City, Michigan, go look it up. Look up Sleeping Bear Dunes. It is a beautiful place. Of course, like every beautiful place in this country, it's starting to get priced out for locals. But I think this is another area where people from Chicago and other big cities decided to come up here where it's beautiful and remote work. So and yes, thank you, Chris Crawl. I do like cold weather until it gets past 40. Once it's past 40, see ya.
So Josh, there are ways that folks up north, keep warm in the cooler temperatures. So I'm hoping that you're availing yourself of that as well while you're up there. So that's all we're going to say about that. That being said, thanks for giving us the update. Let's go ahead and move on to something that's been a theme for us and has been theme for the camp, which is player-led teams. So one of the things that you always hear coaches say, and you've heard Trey say, and us talk about, is how important it is that the players are motivating each other, that there's leadership in the room. We didn't see that last year. Trey, during the season, when he was on the sideline, said that he and the other former players that were there were saying how there was a lack of that. The coaches never had to motivate his teams, right? Throughout the 2017 run, you heard about the Players Council and all of that other stuff that was going on where they handled their business internally, right? So the coaches were there to provide guidance and support, but the players had created a lot of accountability for the team. And it appears this has come up again this week in the meetings and from our offensive coordinator, that the player-led leadership, which has been a focus for this team this year. We talked about, the conversation about the whys last week and how they were holding each other accountable and reminding each other why they were there, right? Who they were playing for, not only the team and each other, but also their families at home. And it appears that's really sticking, which bodes well for the season. Wide receiver room specifically, Kobe Hudson kind of took a backseat to Javon Baker last year. That came across. Javon was, who's doing well, by the way, in the NFL. We'll talk about that later. He was the star of the show, and Kobe kind of was the humble. He's not very, very boisterous at all. Kind of guy. Linebacker room, same kind of thing. There wasn't any leadership. You've got a strong leader in Ethan Barr. When you're talking about that, Lee Hunter has stepped up, but Ricky Barber has been a consistent voice when it comes to that. And when we're really talking about the defensive backs, Johnson has been there. He's not only been doing it on the field, but also off the field as well. I mean, we talked about his numbers last week, but it looks like he's kind of been a quiet guy. He's really stepped up and taken charge as far as that side of the ball is concerned. KJ has really stepped up as well. So it looks like we have in the position groups that we need them. It looks like we have leadership that will carry us through, and that's really come through. We'll see how they react on the sideline, because what I'm looking for in game 3 of the season, when we play the Gators, when the ball doesn't bounce our way, who's along the sideline making sure everybody stays on the straight and level. John Rice Plumlee, I think, tried to do that last year. I think he's genuinely a good dude. I think he wanted the right thing for everybody. I'm not sure whether, because of what happened with Mikey Keene, Matt Lee left because of that. I'm not sure if, because of the whole Mikey Keene situation, if John Rice didn't have the ability to motivate or at least lead the team in that way. I think people liked him, but I don't know if they took him that seriously. So, when it comes to that kind of thing, unfortunately, I don't think he had the ability to motivate the team. He was on the sideline trying to, pump them up last season, but you didn't see them really react. So, they didn't get excited. They didn't, get into it. The energy wasn't up. They just kind of went there. And Trey's comment last year was the coaches were having to go along the bench and try to hype the team up. And you never want that. I mean, the 2017 season, what did we see? We saw bowling celebrations, where they were acting like they were a bowling ball and like knocking each other over in pins. And when the things got tough, they were dancing on the sideline still, locking arms, doing their thing, right? They didn't sit on the bench. And I'm really, really interested to see what that looks like against the University of Florida. But it appears it's been a big focus, and every single player has mentioned that. I love the fact that it ties into their whys and holding each other accountable from that perspective. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think what you just described has a lot less to do with JRP's leadership and a lot to do with the players that were on our team last year. And obviously some of those players are returners this year. And so I'm hoping that the new team that we have just in general, from a holistic standpoint, along with, a new quarterback, Gus taking more control of the leadership from a top-down standpoint, and the coaching staff than he did last season. I think I'm hoping that it's just kind of a brand new culture, something that's a little bit more established and goes a lot better, because what I saw on the sideline or what I saw or heard from Trey when he was on the sideline, he was near it, is, you've got a guy that is a good motivator in JRP, a player that a lot of the ones, people around him really trusted and, would, by all indications that reacted well to him. It's just that I don't think they had that fire within themselves. And I think our record and some of the disappointment that we had last season reflected that. So that's got to change this season. And so it's really good to hear not only all the kind of accountability or, I'm looking in the mirror first that we've heard from Gus Malzahn in this preseason, just him talking about how he's, reflected on what didn't work last season and some of the things that did work and really kind of putting the pedal to the metal this year. I'm hoping that all of that is just flowed through the team and that culture shift has already taken place and we've got those types of because you can't just have one guy from a player standpoint trying to keep everybody up. If nobody's into it, then that's not happening.
It's a vibe. It's a mood, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's got to be bought in.
I mean, I've talked about it with my experience, at UCF is we didn't have great we had a lot of talent in my freshman year in 2002, 2003. We have a lot of talent on that team, but our seniors weren't as big as they weren't as good of a leaders as we had my sophomore year when we 03-04 when we won 26, 27 games and went to the NCAA tournament. That was a completely different culture on that team from start to finish. And that's just my own experience. And I hope that in 1 year's time, especially with the amount of turnover that we have on this team, which is no different than any other team in the country, that we're absolutely ready to kind of display that kind of culture that's coming from the players first, and holding each other accountable. That's something that you said earlier. That is a big thing for a team, that in order to be successful, the players have to hold themselves accountable and hold each other accountable.
Yeah, and that's true in business as well. It's not just
just going there.
Well, you didn't jump in, so I was like,
well,
okay, we can't have dead air. I knew you were
give him a half a beat.
I know, not even a pregnant pause level of pause. But I'm taking this over. So here, I agree with Roger. If you are solo in your own business or you're in a small team, it is hard to work by yourself and be by yourself. And at some point, to get the success you want, you need to bring other people on the team, hire employees, contractors, things like that. And at some point in the future, you need to be just beyond yourself. And when others are around you and they lift you up and you work together and do all those wonderful things, that's when you get good businesses. That's in we all know this, football, sports, the way things work in there is very business-like, right? Going to away games is business meetings. So there's a lot of alignment there. And anyone who's owned their own business, or anyone who wants to own their own business in the future, that's why a lot of the people who are on these teams, a lot of people who are in the military, who've worked together, who've trained together, end up making pretty darn good employees or business owners at the end of the day. So yeah, I when Ben was talking about that, business was kind of on top of mind, especially since I'm on a business trip right now. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but Roger's 100% correct. And I feel like last year, when it comes to football, we were very much like that solo entrepreneur or the small business. And you didn't have like this huge group of people just working together towards the same goals. Yeah. This year, it feels different. You can hear it from Gus. You can hear it from the interviews with the players. Does that translate to wins? Does that get us further? We're going to see, but it seems like we're all moving in the same direction, and that is what you want both in business and in sports.
Yeah, and I think it's and I'm hopeful that potentially we'll start to see this season by season as we move further away from July 1st of 2020, when NIL started happening, right? And so Gus has started, or he has said a lot this preseason, this fall camp. He has talked a lot, pretty openly, about how last season and the season before that he felt like he had to kind of just dive into the NIL lifestyle and just really make sure he's the quote unquote CEO. And he kind of lost his way a little bit of his own personality, towards being just a football coach, which he is at his heart. And I think potentially as we move along and as players get more kind of used to the culture of NIL and just what it means and all that, I'm hoping that we're going to settle into a point where it's not so much about the individual. And I think that's potentially what we saw last season, is just an example. UCF just happened to be an example that we really paid attention to, of potentially a team that was full of individuals that were just trying to get their own. And and we still were able to make it to a bowl game. We had some disappointing losses, of course, but we still had some success, and I think that's indicative of the talent that is on the field. But I'm hopeful that some of the revival that we're hearing and some of the player-led leadership that we're hearing about coming out of these interviews and these different things in fall camp is indicative of those players kind of settling in and realizing that while yes, this is a great benefit to me now that I get this NIL this NIL opportunities, but we're playing a team sport, and if we're ever going to accomplish anything as a team, then we have to come together and we have to play for each other as opposed to for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this about the NIL aspect of this. To me, last year we didn't have as many seniors transfer in.
Sure.
So that's a big part of it. I mean, I mentioned Ethan Barr. He has stepped in and really been a vocal leader in the room. KJ Jefferson has been that way as well. So I agree with you. I think that, depending on where they are in their career dictates a lot of that as well. Hey, is this my last ride, or is this, I'm thinking about maybe transferring again if it goes well at UCF. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of a different mentality there. And, Gus has said this is really shown in the scrimmage and how fast guys are picking things up, how fast they're moving, forward, and how much they can install during those spring practices. Right. So I think that's a big difference. One of the other things our OC Tim Harris said this week, we're using our tight ends. So I don't know if you guys heard, the last few episodes, and also I talked about this on the other shows I mentioned earlier on the Big 12 Huddle and Fourth in Florida. But I really felt like what was going to be different this year was the use of our tight ends. I think we've got two really, really solid tight ends. I think we have one really good pass catching tight end. But surprisingly enough, what you heard is the guy that was the transfer that we were expecting to just be the blocker has also been doing a really good job with his hands in catching passes in the scrimmages and practice. So the expectation, and if you're hearing our OC say that, it may just be to, kind of liven things up or give the defenses something to think about. But we're playing New Hampshire. So if you're gonna use it for that reason, it's not going to be versus New Hampshire, right? So I truly do feel that we have the tight ends that we need. And I feel like we're going to see them featured a little bit more this year, which will be interesting. Also, one of the big things that made the Fiesta Bowl team in 2013 successful, and a lot of George O'Leary's teams, was the downfield blocking by wide receivers. And it was something that was sorely missed last year. You saw guys, I don't know how many times we had conversations about this, whether you actually need to block in on a particular play or not, you need to be out there blocking because A, you never know what's going to happen on a football field, and B, it gives the defenses a different look. So if you're showing tendencies, for example, if you're showing a certain formation or whatever pre-snap, and Javon Baker's running halfway down the field and just kind of slow and walking the rest of the way while the play's still going, I'm not worried about Javon Baker getting the ball. So the next time that happens, guess who I'm not worried about and who I'm focusing on, right? So that's important. Also, when it comes to screenplay, we've talked about screens quite a bit and where we think that Johnny Richardson can fit in. And it's really going to be getting in space as opposed to between the tackles. When we were talking about our offensive play, that's another big piece of it. So, finishing blocks, making sure they're set up. Tim Harris talked about, making sure that we're doing it later in games, that they reviewed the tape. They saw a lot of missed opportunities and a lot of opportunity for better play from a blocking perspective. A lot of these trick plays that Gus has is to keep defenses guessing, number one. So everybody has to play like the ball could go to that particular part of the field. And two, when it comes to blocking for wide receivers, blocking is one of the most important, especially downfield blocking is one of the most important things that they do, because they're only going to get targeted, maybe 5 to 10 times, depending on where you are in a receiver during a game. What are they doing the rest of the 110 snaps?
Yeah.
Right? They should be blocking downfield. And one thing George O'Leary always said is they earned their touches, right? And the way you earn your touches is by participating in the rest of the play to set up success for the rest of the receivers. And we didn't see that last year. I don't know if that was because a lot of the plays were I think the first season of John Rice Plumlee, everybody knew he was going to get one look and run. Last year, what came up in interviews this year was that John Rice Plumlee also was only taught 2 looks and then run because it was such a run-heavy offense and it was expected to be. Well, KJ Jefferson's completely different. So they need to have those blocks down the field as those plays develop, because KJ Jefferson's the type of guy who's going to move around the pocket, climb the ladder, keep his eyes downfield, and he's not necessarily going to tuck and run. He will tuck and run, but he's not necessarily going to tuck and run and throw the ball down the field. So those comeback routes that we saw in 2013, those skinny posts, all of those kind of things, as the time develops, defenses break down, and it creates opportunities for offenses, especially if those blocks are continuing down the field. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think overall the what you're describing is physicality, right? And we didn't really see a whole lot of that last season. We saw some physical running from RJ Harvey, especially, obviously, like he's a physical runner. Like he can run away from you if he gets in space, but he's a physical runner. And our style of play, as you've talked about a lot, we're kind of hitting the A gap mostly in running the football. And so everything that you just described as far as, the outside blockers, the blocking coming from whether the tight end or continually from the man, he's doing a great job producing tonight, guys. Are you guys going to watch this episode on YouTube for sure? Another thing that RJ Harvey has shown is once he gets to the second level, he has the ability to bounce it outside. And that's where that just one block, can be the difference between a great 10-yard run, a great 12-yard rush because he bounced it outside, he made somebody miss, or a 75-yard touchdown run. That can make one difference. That one block can make that difference. And so certainly, I think the ability that's music to my ears that I'm hearing from the offensive coordinator is that he's very pleased to see our ability from the wide receiver position of blocking. And we got some size. We got some big wide receivers, Whittemore and Jacoby Jones, and, Kobe Hudson isn't exactly a small guy himself. And so if we can see them getting more physical with the defenders and realizing the right time to deliver a hard hit and spring his teammates. It's kind of like that type of mentality, just kind of like it feathers into exactly what we started in this conversation, is that, them playing for each other and them doing the little things in order for the team to be successful.
Yeah. I was going to say, we had a great comment on the sidebar with Roger that as small as relative to Ben. I think everyone on the team is small relative to Ben. I would say Kobe Hudson is deceptive because when I met him at practice, he looked about my height, maybe a little taller, which I'm very small compared to Ben. But everybody
is really small compared to Ben. I've got pictures with me and Ben at the stadium standing next to each other, and I look like a child.
Except for Taco Fall. He makes me
Yeah.
look like I would make Roger look, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. So I will say this, and we're getting toward prove territory, but RJ Harvey, Kobe Hudson, they have put on some muscle. How about that? They have put on some muscle, and I
No doubt
feel
about
like
that.
the physicality part that you're saying, Ben, is absolutely true across the board. Even Gage. I mean, love JRP. He is not in the mold of KJ. Dante is in the mold of KJ, or vice versa, really. Maybe a little taller. But the reality is, I'm right back to the tight ends real quick. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in the room. There's 7 guys in the room. You're probably only going to see 3. I think Pittman Jr. is going to make a huge impact on the season. I hope Kylan Fox gets in a little bit. I think the transfer that's coming in, I think Evan Morris is going to make impact.
From Michigan State.
Between those 3, and I know Kylan Fox is a freshman, but I'm really hoping that he kind of does the things Pittman did when he was a freshman, and you see these little, time frames of like, oh, I can see why you wanted to be on this team. I feel like it's going to be a little interesting because I don't think we've had that many tight ends with that level of potential, both pass catching and blocking in a little while. So I'm really intrigued to see how that's going to work. And to your point, Ben, all it takes is one good sustained block. I almost said held. One good sustained block to pop an RJ or to get Johnny Richardson to blow past you going around the corner. It's going to be really interesting. That's why I think it's not just because of the tight ends, but I think that's why we're all kind of excited about the season. There seems to be the pieces of the puzzle there. Let's see if they all fit together and kind of work together. That's going to be the problem for most teams. You have all these pieces. They haven't all been here for 4 years. How do they gel together and work as a team? And hopefully we'll all see it within 1 or 2 games.
Well, let me say this about that too, right? So one of the things that we kept hearing was how many penalties that the offense had, right? Yeah. It was like 9 penalties, whatever. A little inside baseball here. Some of that was coming from holding penalties from people learning how to block. So it's actually a good sign, I guess, in a way, that was happening, because that means that they were actually putting forth the effort to do some downfield blocking, and hopefully they're learning from their mistakes. And we'll talk about it. One of the things, Gus had mentioned is that they had cut the penalties from scrimmage 1 to scrimmage 2 in half, and they did it again. There were only 3 offensive penalties in the 3rd scrimmage. And one of the things to remember, folks, these scrimmages are a time that the 3s also get out there. Right. So it's not just the 1s and 2s that they're talking about when they're talking about these penalties, right? It's also the 3s that are still learning, or the younger guys that have that happening as well.
I think another reason, just to go on this thread here about blocking, I mean, I think that's the reason why we're hearing really good things about Evan Morris coming out of camp, is, the tight end transfer, 5th-year guy from Michigan State. I mean, I think even I agree with you, Roger. What you said earlier is, like, if he's going to go, so he had, as a senior, he played all 12 games for Michigan State. He was in on, by all indications, of like the large majority of every snap at tight end for Michigan State. But he had 4 catches for 8 yards last year, right? So, like, he is not known to be a pass catching tight end. He might have the ability to catch the ball, quite well. He just wasn't utilized that way at Michigan State. And so I think he's getting a lot of the praise because, as you said, as a team, we're trying to get better at all the little details, blocking included. And he is probably showing his younger teammates, or just his teammates in general, how you can do that, how you can impact a game without necessarily being, a skill position, catching the ball all the time, how you can really truly impact the game. And I would believe that translates into Evan Morris playing a lot of snaps, not necessarily despite of Pittman, because I think he's going to be our main tight end from a pass catching standpoint. But I think that as we go along in the season, and as Gus and his offensive staff are always looking for opportunities to catch a good opponent by surprise, I would not be surprised to see him, especially around the goal line potentially, where we really struggled last year, where all of a sudden, you get a guy like Evan Morris, who is known for his blocking, and all of a sudden he's, taking a short out route and he's catching a touchdown pass. I mean, I just would not be surprised to see that this season, with the ability that he brings to it. But I think our main catching tight end option is going to be Pittman, and I'm excited to see his growth this year as well.
Yeah, one of the things, Tim Harris talked about was Johnny Richardson. The question was asked of him. It was, hey, how's Johnny Richardson going to be used this year? And he said he's going to be used. He's a playmaker, but not necessarily as a running back. So that goes back to tunnel screens.
We've been saying it for a while, yeah.
Yep. So, I do believe they know what they have in Johnny Richardson if they can get him past the first tackler and get him in space, right? He's very hard to tackle because he's mobile, he's got good cuts, and he's pretty fast. Now, the thing about it is, going back to that tight end point, if you've got a tight end that is, typically going to block for somebody like Johnny Richardson, if you have a couple of plays here and there that go to that pass catching tight end as opposed to setting up the tunnel screen, that it makes defenses question their tendencies and keeps them on their toes a little bit more, and they can't shift, right? Because for defenses, your goal is to set up your defense so that whomever or wherever the ball is going, you've got more people in the vicinity to be able to tackle or outnumber the offensive players, right? And for offensive players, that's why you see linemen shift, you see them twist, you see them do all these other things, is because they're trying to create mismatches in small areas to overpower that defense. So if we can get him involved in the game, not only does it take the focus off of the tight end position for a pass catching tight end, it also keeps them guessing when it comes to Johnny Richardson and when he's used in those plays. Speaking of offense, one of the other things that came out this week was Tim Harris talked a lot about Darren Henshaw. We all heard about him working with the quarterbacks. Obviously, he was a great quarterback, a historic quarterback in his own right when he played for UCF. But there was a big focus for KJ Jefferson on his feet and his footwork. When he was rolling left or right, he wasn't as comfortable. KJ Jefferson, if you watched him, he tended to plant his feet before he threw, and he had to be stable in order to throw a good ball when he was on the run. And so what they've been working on with KJ is to give him that ability. Now, McKenzie did this amazingly, right? He would roll out and he'd run and he'd throw across the field. He'd do whatever, the things you're not supposed to do, which is throw it across the field, changed arm angles, did all that stuff. Mario was his quarterback coach at the time. They did a really good job with that. But it seems like with KJ, a lot of his balls were not hitting the target. Josh, I saw that look. We're not hitting the target when he was on the run because his footwork was not good enough. You know what I mean? And so they've really focused on that, and there seems to be a lot better ability to connect on the pass when he's on the run. Josh, you're making me laugh. All right, Kobe Hudson. Thank goodness he can't produce and put the banners up right now because I'd be getting roasted. All right, Kobe Hudson was another person that was highlighted, and in Kobe's interview, what he was talking about, what he was working on this year was 50-50 balls. So he's been getting a lot of work in on 50-50 balls. Javon Baker was the guy who, really, I don't know what's being said right now, but Josh and Ben are laughing. So
This is all on Josh at the moment.
I mean, he's completely off screen.
He had to
He's
go
taking
off
himself off camera and everything. All right,
Yeah.
so Kobe Hudson's working on it. Oh, he's still laughing. Kobe Hudson's
too much of a child at the moment.
Clearly, he's working on his 50-50 balls and making sure that he's better at catching those. Javon Baker was our guy last year for those. He made some really tough catches. There was some really like, how did you drop those balls? Moments. Josh is staying off screen. Josh, you're killing me. He is bright red right now.
Red.
Bright red because he's laughing so hard. I'm turning that way. All right. So like a lot of drops, right? Last year that we were just head scratchers, right? And Kobe Hudson was really working on that. He had pretty sure hands, but even Kobe had some drops that were just like question marks. So clearly Kobe Hudson is going to be our guy for those 50-50 type plays as well. And that's been a focus for him this off season. So along with Kobe Hudson, you mentioned Trent Whittemore. Trent Whittemore and Jacoby Jones both getting consistent call outs from the Woosa, Josh. From the coaching staff, as is Chauncey Magwood. As we're coming out of the interviews, one of the things that was always asked is who stood out with the play, right? Who stood out? Who made a big catch? Whatever. And it seemed like every week it was a different guy, and that's good, But Jacoby Jones has been getting a lot of mentions, as has Trent Whittemore early on. And he's a taller receiver. He was a guy last year that transferred from Kentucky. He's a legacy guy for UCF. His dad played for UCF and was a good receiver in his own right. And Chauncey Magwood.
Whittemore transferred from Florida, didn't he? The Magwood transferred.
Yeah. Florida. Sorry, I meant to say Florida. Yeah. Magwood was from Kentucky.
That's right.
Yep. So Magwood was expected to be a difference maker last year. Obviously, everything ran. All the receiving was going through our two big playmakers, which was Javon Baker and Kobe Hudson. So if we've got a couple of other receivers that can make a difference, I expect us not to. It was all either run the ball, try to stretch the field, and throw up our passes were all, long throws, 30 to 50 yard throws to those guys. That means that I expect us in the middle of the field to have some more attack more in the middle of the field, which is good because that loosens up the defenses for both the running game and also for the screen game when we're talking about Johnny Richardson. So it sounds like those guys are making a name for themselves. Chauncey Magwood has been mentioned. The first scrimmage made some really, really good plays. Mentioned again after the third scrimmage on being someone who kind of stood out on the field. So excited. He was a big time player for Kentucky, or was expected to be. And
he was expected to be, but he didn't do much.
He didn't do much. He was expected to be
redshirted last year. So
yeah, and so there's 10 messages there that I haven't read. So he was expected to do big things last year, but I don't think, we didn't really call his number or anybody's number besides Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker last year, and that was reflected in their numbers. I mean, both of them were fantastic receivers, and I think they took up most of those calls.
Yeah, and I think what you're describing there is Whittemore. He played in all 13 games last year for us, for UCF, and you're right. He wasn't targeted much. He was mostly used as a blocking wide receiver or just out there, to be honest. I mean, he played at every game, but he had 3 catches for 36 yards in total last season. But I think that's not necessarily as a big example of like him not having the ability, because he's a big guy, 6'4", like over, 215. He's a big guy out there. I think that potentially going back to what you described earlier, Roger, is was JRP getting much further than his second read? Maybe, throughout, as he was managing the offense. Like, I mean, is he able to find a guy like Trent Whittemore out there who's running a route and, because he's not getting to that progression, that third progression, I guess, in the offense, Whittemore might not have even been the third or fourth option. But, it seems like by all indications, KJ Jefferson is just a little bit more of a poised quarterback, always looking to throw the ball, keeping his eyes downfield and going through his progression. So I think that potentially opens up the options even more for a guy like Whittemore to reel in a lot more catches than three for 36 yards.
Yeah, so I'm excited. I mean, if KJ can be who we think he can be, and he can get his feet in order and can be even more accurate than what he was, because he was pretty accurate at Arkansas, especially on the long throws. The middle of the field wasn't as accurate, but I think he was at 63% completion percentage last year on a bad Arkansas team where he was getting literally chased around the football field and ultimately ended up getting injured because of it. I feel like this, by spreading it out, giving more options, more things for defenses to worry about, I think it gives those guys a better opportunity to not only get open, but I think the offensive philosophy is one where it isn't so run heavy. But I truly think that is because of the confidence in KJ and his ability to throw versus the game plan that we had last year with JRP. And again, he threw more last year than he did the year before. His the spin on his ball looked better.
Yeah, he showed a lot of improvement last year.
Yeah.
Just the injuries kind of took over, really. That was an issue for JRP last year.
Exactly. That, and our backup quarterback, unfortunately was running backwards more than he was running forward, and was making longer throws, which looked great when they worked, but when they didn't, boy. All right. So
real quick, before we move on from wide receivers, since this is the last show that we're going to record, probably more than likely before the depth chart comes out, right?
Yeah. That's on Monday.
The three of us get an opportunity, since we're here, recording this pod, like, who's our wide receiver 3? We've been talking about it all summer. Who starts at the third wide receiver position? I think we all agree that Kobe Hudson and Xavier Townsend are going to be 1 and 2. So, and we already know for sure that there's going to be an and in between these, probably two names in the wide receiver 3 position or whatever, however they hedge their bets in the UCF depth chart that we see every year. But do we think it's going to be Trent Whittemore? Do we think it's going to be Jacoby Jones, Gerard Baker, Magwood? I mean, who do we think?
I'm going to say it's situational. Jacoby Jones is more of a stout wide receiver, right? He's built stronger. So I would expect.
Yeah, they're both on the same height. Him and Whitmore. They're both 6'4". They're both big guys, tall guys.
Yeah, but Jacoby Jones, Trent is more of a speedier guy, and Jacoby Jones is more of a solid build. So I would expect it depends on the type of play that we're playing, right? So if we have the screen game, if we have something like that, I think it's going to be more situational, because I don't think there's anybody who's like standing out. If it's a pass play, I'm going to put Chauncey Magwood out there, and I think he's the true wide receiver 3. I think Trent Whittemore is someone who has gotten better, has made some plays, has impressed. But I feel like, just from what I'm hearing, that Chauncey's going to be that wide receiver behind X. Josh?
You know what? I'll tell you who I want it to be, and that's Burdell Richardson. But I think it's too early for that. I think that's next year. I think next year. I don't even think on that third he'll be a part of the end. I honestly think it'll be like running back 1 last year. There'll be like 2 or 3 people, and I do kind of. I do think you're in that ballpark. Whittemore, Magwood, probably you're going to be the 2 ands. Maybe you even add Jones, if you want to reward that hard work, 5th-year guy. So I think the ands on wide receiver 3 are going, or maybe 2, because wide receiver 1 might be Townsend and Hudson, and then wide receiver 2 will be like 3 ands. I think that's going to happen. Actually, I think it's going to happen in a few different plays. I don't even know how many ands are going to be in the running.
It'll be interesting to see, because I think X, traditionally wide receiver 3 is the slot, right? And I think X is going to stay in the slot. I think, he got some run. They tried him out. And, a big focus for this camp and this offseason was getting guys, especially senior guys, to play multiple positions because of all the injuries that happened last year and how it affected depth, right? You talked about the linemen, you talked about QB, you talked about receiver, you talked about a bunch of different things. And X was injured last year. He got injured, I think, like 4th or 5th game. And so everybody was like, why aren't we using Xavier Townsend? Well, that's why we weren't using Xavier Townsend. Why weren't we using Johnny Richardson? Because he couldn't pass block as well, and he certainly couldn't run block as well, right? So it's just by virtue of his size. I mean, he's a smaller framed person, and he's shorter. And, when you're having to block or be the lead blocker, and these linemen in the Big 12 are, defensive linemen, look at our defensive tackles. You got Lee Hunter on the other side of the field. He ain't going to make much of a difference unless he's like taking out his knees. So I do think that X is technically wide receiver 3 in the slot. I think he stays there. I think that between the tunnel screens that we have with Johnny Richardson, and I think X will get some of those as well, I think that will throw defenses off and their tendencies and make it a little more complex when they're both on the field. So it'll be, because really you have 3 options then in the short game, right? In the short part of the field, you would have your wide receiver 3 on like a drag route or something of that nature. Then you've got your you've got Johnny Richardson, if he's on the field at the same time, who could be someone that comes out of a screen. Or you've then got your tight end that can be a threat as well. So I really think this year has been about, changing up those positions from the injury perspective and having them do multiple positions. But I also think this year's offense is going to be a lot more complex than what we saw last year. All right. Yeah. Josh, did you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
All right.
I'm good
awesome.
to go.
All right. So, one of the things we want to talk about is what they were doing in Scrimmage 3, right? What did it actually look like? And a lot of what Gus Malzahn, a big focus for this year, and we know why that is, because we saw those games last year and how many close games we lost, was 2-minute drills in different situations, right? So those were all dedicated and predicated on, hey, this is the last drive or the last 2 drives. You got 2 minutes left. You got to get down the field to score and win the game. So most of this scrimmage was situational and 2-minute situations. One big thing that came across that we've been talking about defensively has been turnovers, and there were 3 picks in the scrimmage. One of them, which was in the end zone. So, that's a huge deal, and that's what we want to see, because it's been a focus for the defense to get those turnovers. So maybe they're starting to put it together. But with 2-minute offenses, what are you going to be doing most of the time with 2-minute offenses? Throwing the ball. So, you get a little advantageous if you're going to throw the ball most of the time in those situations. One other thing that we've been focusing on quite a bit this scrimmage was game prep. Or after the scrimmage for this week was game prep. So Tuesday we started doing the install for the New Hampshire game. Now, do I think the New Hampshire install is all that complicated? No. There's a reason we play them first, right? This is no disrespect to the kids that are playing on there, but let's be real, it's just not the same game, right? Even if George O'Leary was out there playing for him like he did back in the day, you know what I mean? It's just not, it's not something that, it's just not going to happen. So we are not going to show everything. This is all going to be about consistency, making sure we've got the fundamentals and got the basics down of our offense. which will then layer on the other stuff. But they were doing the install this week, so that's exciting. One thing that came out of camp too, and especially this week, is Stacey Gage, highly touted recruit that we haven't really talked about, and we haven't really been talking about the recruits that we've been bringing in. A lot of 4-star running backs, high-level running backs that we've been bringing in that just haven't been talked about after they commit. And the reason for that is because our running back room has been so stacked, and the emergence of RJ Harvey, and all of that. And again, this year's no exception. You've got Penny Boone back there. You got Miles Montgomery, who's making noise. And then obviously RJ Harvey. But Stacey Gage looks like this was his opportunity to kind of show what he could do. It seems like he was turning some heads this week in camp. So that bodes well for the future. In fact, one of our more recent 4-star commits, guess who he has teamed up with and who he is playing for now. And I'll give you a hint. It's somewhere in the Northeast with a quarterback that's a UCF quarterback that is now playing somewhere in the Northeast.
I have no idea where you're going with this.
All right.
I don't either, and this is my thing.
So Boston College has Tommy Castellanos as the starting quarterback. And one of our running backs that we recruited here that didn't get playing time is now starting for BC this year, or is projected to start for BC as the starting running back. So you have a UCF North offense in BC for this coming season.
I was going to say, just since we're going to do non sequiturs-ish anyway, all the fans, and you know who you are, that went up to Boston for that Boston College game and watched Matt Ryan just tear through us. Imagine our second and third strings, like a decade plus later, going to Boston College to start for you. Like, you would, it blows my mind. I was at that game. I was like right at the end zone, and it wasn't a bad game. We absolutely lost, but
we got smoked.
It didn't feel too bad because I was hanging out with friends, but and it was a very loud crowd.
So you like the hurt?
No, I don't. That was no. I like the opposite. Like, I like it when we go to away games and we just do so well that everyone just shuts up. But the fan in me remembering that game and having you say that, two of our, they're backups. They didn't, well, there could be other reasons too, but not our primary QB or running back. And then we had Ryan O'Keefe, as a wide receiver, I think last year too.
That's right. You're right.
That just blows my mind as a UCF fan.
And guess what? Last year, BC did better than they have in many, many, many years because
BC looked awesome last year.
Oh, yeah.
They really had some great games.
They had some great games against weaker competition, but they didn't. The harder competition.
They held their own against FSU.
Well, they're not going to. Yeah, I mean, they're not going to do. They're not going to show that in every game quite yet. But that's how you build upon it. I mean, who knows what they have there in Castellanos and McDonald and everybody.
Well, they have UCF. They have UCF backup starting there. So good. It's funny. I mean, we've got quarterbacks everywhere. You've got Castellanos. You've got Mikey Keene starting over at San Diego. They're supposed to, or was it San Diego he's at now? Diego. Fresno. That's right. Yeah, Fresno State. And they had a resurgence last year and are supposed to be good again this year and expected to compete in the Mountain West. And then obviously you have Sock Boy. So, that's UCF has done. Our players, we've obviously recruited well. They may not have necessarily panned out here, but we've recruited well enough for them to be starting on other teams and doing well there and making a difference for them. All right, so next week, let's talk about a little bit about next week's show before we move to the next topic. Next week is an exciting week. It is going to be the beginning of season 2 of the Knighted Ones. We've officially made it 52 this week. So we do one a week. So that means we've completed one full season after this show's over. Next week, we'll have some guests on. Some of them, well, all of them, you'll know who they are. But excited to do that. We'll have a season preview. We'll do a schedule review and kind of walk through what our win-loss record projections are. We'll review that roster that we've mentioned a few times. And, we're going to bring back some of the segments that those of you that have been with us since the last football season will remember that during the off season just don't make a whole lot of sense. So I'm excited about that. Now, let's talk about bringing back things. Let's talk a little bit about Shaquem Griffin. He was on campus this past week and got a little bit of a surprise as he was inducted as a first ballot, first opportunity Hall of Famer for UCF football. Was surprised on stage and, gave a very emotional, heartfelt speech afterwards because he didn't know this was coming. So when you have these types of things that happen, these announcements, normally someone is told, beforehand. They get a call from the AD. The AD says, "Hey, we're pleased, to tell you and excited to tell you that you're going to become part of the UCF Hall of Fame class and the UCF Hall of Fame." Shaquem Griffin did not get that. The AD, there was the lunch that they do, the kickoff lunch that they do every season. Before the season, I've participated in many of them. And they have various speakers, and one of them was invited was Shaquem Griffin. Well, unbeknownst to him, after he gave his speech, Terry Mohajir told him, "Hey, by the way, I'm excited to tell you that you are now going to be in the UCF Hall of Fame." So what a moment. This was his first year that he was eligible as a graduate of UCF. He's meant a lot to UCF while he played. He's done a lot of work as an ambassador for UCF afterwards. Just congratulations to Shaquem Griffin. He is one of those guys that's one of our own. I remember tailgating with his parents after games, and he's just an awesome human being. And I'm so happy that he was provided the opportunity and in the way that it happened for him to represent UCF in the hall, because if anybody deserved it, Shaquem Griffin deserved it.
Yeah, it was just that video of him, receiving that news from Terry Mohajir and just his genuine surprise. I mean, literally everything that Shaquem Griffin ever does just it appears this way because it is this way, that he's just a genuine person, good human being overall. And now that we have started doing the Hall of Fame more on an annual basis over the last few years, if I'm not mistaken, since we had some catching up to do, I think he's the first ballot Hall of Famer that we have, which is much deserved. I mean, if there's as great of players that we have had at this university over the last, relatively short to the rest of the country time frame that we
had Ben Stout as a center.
Well, hold on. No. I was just going to stick with the football side. I definitely would not qualify.
Right, got it.
They might put
this
my
is not
name.
humble. This is not humble brag, Ben. This is humble Ben.
They might put me. Yeah, they might put my name on the bottom of the last chair on the end of the bench. Maybe I'll get that. But
12th man of the year,
the honorable 12th man that gets in a garbage time.
The Ben Stout
Griffin. I mean, I think that if any former UCF football player, at least in my eyes, that deserved to be maybe the first statue out, or regardless of what the size of the statue out in front of a stadium or whatever, it would be Shaquem Griffin, that kind of pose he made after a sack.
Hold on. I know we're heaping praise on Shaquem, and it's well deserved, but I'm going to ask you this question: Shaquem Griffin or Mackenzie Milton for the first statue outside?
I would say personally, I think it would be. I mean, it'd be hard to choose from them, and I think it would be a really difficult decision on the university's part. But I feel like just for the fact that Mackenzie Milton plays quarterback, and we have had more than three, but three legendary quarterbacks at UCF. It would be kind of hard to push it, but you could make it it'd be an easier argument to say, why don't we put Shaquem Griffin in because he represented us so well and blah, 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 or, to be that statue. And I think it would be that pose that he made after, in the Peach Bowl after he had that sack. That's just, so famous with his chest out and everything. He just, he just has these almost urban legends about Shaquem Griffin. I mean, just the story of him sleeping in the facility, prior to that 2017 season, which of course is for the most part been confirmed by every player that we've talked to about it,
including Trey Neal, who said that room stunk.
Yeah, I'm sure it did not smell great. Trey obviously has vouched for him on that part. But just all the many examples that we've heard. I mean, just his whole story in general, and him being able to not only have so much success at UCF, but also go on to play in the NFL, be drafted to an NFL team and actually play for them.
And be an ambassador
multiple seasons. Yeah. I mean, he's just a great representative for anyone that he is, any organization that he's a part of. But first and foremost, we get the ability to claim him as a great representative of UCF. And so congratulations to him. So happy for him and his family. It's well deserved, and for him to be the first ballot Hall of Famer at UCF, I think it's a really cool thing that he's that guy.
Josh, anything to add there?
Honestly, if you would do a kind of back-to-back statue with KZ and Shaquem, I think that would be the. I don't think you have one without the other, and vice versa. Specifically in 2017, the leadership, the on the field play, I think you need both. And Shaquem, I've met him a couple of times. He's just as genuine as everyone seems and sees. He's a great story. He's a great person. He's the godfather of a cruise ship, I believe, because someone from the UCF fandom it's either Norwegian, I forgot which one, put forth his name in a business meeting, if I remember correctly. Hey, he's a great representative of the university, great representative of the state of Florida, and just overall great guy. I love it. Love every single part of it. And statue, throw KZ and Shaquem back to back.
Does KZ get in next year though as a first ballot Hall of Famer? The year that is he eligible? Because that's 5 years after he transferred, not 5 years after he.
How many games does he need to win in a row to be in the Hall of Fame?
What?
I don't know.
I think you have to.
But I'll say this to Ben's question, right? So. Yes, he transferred, but he did transfer as a graduate. So
yeah, he had already graduated, so I guess he would qualify in 5 years
qualify next year.
2018 season. Okay.
It'd be really hard to not have him in the Hall of Fame with as much as he has done for the university, PR and otherwise. I couldn't fathom that. It'd be like not having portals.
Not just the university, while he was playing or, while he was still in college football, but also people forget he had, before the consolidation of our collectives, he was also part of the group that started our NIL program here as well.
Right. Yeah.
So big deal. So I don't know.
No, they're not on Stock Boy that KZ didn't come back and play for us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, 100%. I mean, whether KZ was who he was, after his injury, doesn't matter. The fact that he would have played at UCF had it not been for Sock Boy. So
that should have been our story as opposed to Florida State's story. I mean, it should have been him coming back and playing in that game. I don't think obviously none of us will ever forget the tragedy that was that Black Friday game where he did get hurt, but I'll never forget where I was sitting when he came into that game for Florida State, because I just think it's one of the more remarkable feats in recent college football history, for sure, that he even had the ability to come back in and play college football removed from that injury.
Yep, agree. All right, moving on from the past and moving on to the future and other college football news. UConn seems to think they have a Big 12 invite. What is going on? Like I don't understand. Like,
yeah,
I mean, there's no way on God's green earth, and I hate to say this way, that UConn joins for football. Maybe for basketball. Maybe for basketball, right? But there's no way for football. So all of the UConn fans out there, your Husky, the I think they call themselves some sort of the Nutmeg group or whatever they call themselves. It ain't happening.
No.
You are not joining for football.
No.
You may join for basketball, but that doesn't make much sense either unless Brett Yormark has done what he said he was going to do, which is shop what our basketball contract would look like separated from football and potentially move UConn into in for basketball, and it makes more than the Big East, because I think the Big East is making somewhere around $5 million a year. I don't know how UConn's athletic department, they were already running in the negative, making more than that in the AAC. So I don't know, how that worked out. Obviously, season tickets are a part of that. There's a lot more, excitement about UConn basketball in the Big East because of the traditional rivalries that were there. Playing in the Garden, their resurgent success, which they blamed on the AAC, and I'm going to say look in the mirror, because if you couldn't do it in the AAC, I don't know what to tell you. You were one of the blue bloods that was supposed to hold the standard, and you didn't. So you let Houston take your thunder. You let SMU steal your thunder. You had UCF at times stealing your thunder. I'm sorry, but UConn basketball in the AAC should have been, if not the number one, the number two team, and it wasn't. So yes, do I think there's value for basketball to bring UConn in for basketball? 100%. But I'm sorry, UConn fans, if any of you are listening to this, and if anybody who's listening to this wants to tag a UConn fan, and I'm sure we'll have a short about this that we can tag UConn fans on, it ain't happening for football. It's just not.
Just stay in the Big East, UConn. We don't want you around our conference anymore. Like, you don't deserve to be in the Big 12. Yes, amazing basketball program, back-to-back national champions. But, like, the whole reason why you guys, like, wanted to just go back to the Big East and reform it and all that stuff it had everything to do with basketball. And so stay in the Big East, stay in your little Northeast corner, and just shut up about it. Like, I'm tired. I don't want to hear anything from UConn about joining the Big 12. I mean, you guys are. It's ridiculous, because, and here's the deal too. It's like, I understand Big 12 is the best conference in the country when it comes to basketball, bar none. We've talked about it every week. It's got stronger. It's gotten stronger this season. 20 conference games is going to be a absolute, and I will use it again, gauntlet going through this. But but clearly UConn doesn't need the added competition on their schedule. I mean, they were a number one seed of the last two seasons, and they took that to the NCAA championship. So they don't need the Big 12 from a basketball standpoint. And so, no, do I want to split any of our conference money with UConn? And do I think on top of that, they actually add any value to our conference? I understand they're national champions, and I'll give them the respect in basketball, but we all know that when it comes to conference realignment, like football, football drives a ship. So they don't provide anything from a football standpoint, or quite frankly, any other sports that I've heard of. So
they had a pretty good baseball team, despite not having any lights on their field for like most of their time in the AAC.
Well, they can use their Big East resources, hopefully get some lights on their field. And
they do have them now. They did not at the time.
Congratulations. Maybe they can get some better bats or whatever. But like, they can use their Big East resources for that. I don't need them in the Big 12.
Look, UConn fans, you've been to your football stadium, right? Because I have. And there is 0.0% chance that can be a Big 12 stadium. And I know you have all that room around it to grow and build up. 0.0. You need to do a heck of a lot more on the football side to do anything like that. So I agree with Roger there. Now, I'll take the devil's advocate view on the other side. You got Dan Hurley to not go to the Lakers and stay in college.
He didn't want to go to that dumpster fire over there in the Lakers. He wanted to win the championship.
Maybe, but think about the amount of money that they had to pay him for that. I think that's why, because they're only getting paid $5 million in the Big East. They're doing everything that they can to get into a power conference to get a piece of that contract. And the only way UConn can do that, in my opinion, is through a basketball only, which Brett Yormark, if he gets his way on the basketball contract, that might be a possibility. All right, go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry.
100%. And if we get to split off basketball and football and try to get basketball only based revenue, come on, Gonzaga. Come on, UConn.
Right.
It's on. And I love UCF, but oh my God, if we could even get like halfway into that, we need our billionaire donor to start ponying up and like our businesses to start doing well, because we're gonna have like nil in the 5 to 10 million range a year to compete with half of that version of a Big 12.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, I think we've done pretty good with the roster we've put together this year, so it'll be really, really, really interesting on that. And Gonzaga is doing it with a lot less money than that too. So let's stick with the theme of UCF hoops as well. We were going to talk about the Knights in the NFL, but we're at an hour and 21 minutes. So, other than, shout out to Kalia Davis, who was making a big difference this year and was expected to start, had a great preseason, et cetera, and unfortunately had another injury and looks like he's going to be out for the season. So shout out to him. He's earned that spot, and I hope it works out for him. All right, so let's transition to hoops. Big news on the hoops front. Mikey Williams completed his court mandated requirements and posted from his Instagram channel that he is on campus, he is enrolled, and he is on the team. So looks like Mikey Williams will be a UCF Knight for this season. What do you guys think that, considering he's only played high school basketball, do you think that makes a difference for us either, and I'm going to give you two choices, from the beginning of the season or maybe towards the end of it?
Yeah, I'd probably would, since by all indications, it seems like our two main leaders on this team are going to come from the two main guard spots. I would say that Mikey Williams would make more of it, or he'll kind of come along as the season goes on. If you were able to make an immediate impact just with his athleticism and just with his talent overall, from the beginning of the season on, that would be a very welcomed and happy surprise on my part. But I think he's definitely going to get some run. Like, I think Johnny Dawkins is going to try to figure out what he has in the early season with Mikey Williams, getting let's call it, I'm just going to throw out a number like maybe about 8 to 10 minutes a game in the beginning of the season, which would, honestly,
you really think it'll be that high?
Actually, I mean, as I said it, I was like going to pull it. I was like, as I said it, I was just going to pull it back real quick. I mean, I think maybe five to 7 minutes a game in the early season, seeing what he has in those stints would be probably more accurate than the 8 to 10. But I think he's going to. I would be surprised if he didn't get any run in the beginning of the season. I think Johnny Dawkins is going to see what he has in game situations, unless there's something unforeseen that we're not going to be able to view ourselves from a practice or training camp standpoint. But beyond that, I feel like he's going to get some run in the early season and then start to settle into a role with this team. I don't know if he's ever necessarily going to be like a superstar by the end of this season, but I feel like he'll come along. He'll play an important role on this team and kind of set the foundation for, in my opinion, what will be a more of a breakout year the following year. I think we'd be in pretty good shape if for some reason on this roster with this team and the amount of talent that we at least see that we have at this point. Obviously, we've got to see how they gel together. If he makes a big impact throughout this year, then I feel like that's going to probably take this talented roster to a level that would exceed our expectations as fans. And I'm obviously here for that if that's the type of special player that he's going to be.
Josh?
I feel like Ben's last point is really the most important or overall point. It's how they gel. And this is why you have lighter schedules with a couple of real tests. I think we did that a few years back with like Ole Miss and Alabama in the middle of games we feel like we should probably win. So I agree that I think Williams will be lighter at the beginning unless he goes on a roll, and you might not take him out. I do think, to your point, Roger, at the end of the season, unless something happens or someone else just takes over, my hope is that his athleticism that he's shown on tape, and in high school, but over time, and maybe even some of the life circumstances he's gone through, gives him a little more maturity, just as a person, right? And hopefully as a player too. And being in this, you might have seen all the Johnny Dawkins little clips we have of him doing coaching kind of in the last couple of weeks. I hope that environment lets him and the whole team thrive. So I feel like the idea of shorter minutes, unless he's on a roll, and don't take out the hot shooter, right? It's like at the end of the Team USA Olympics, you know who is getting that ball at the gold medal game, even though you have like probably 4 to 6 Hall of Famers in the top 5 almost the entire game. You know who's getting the ball. If it becomes that, and he does that well, I think you might see those minutes stretch. I think he's going to be important down the stretch. We'll go back to this tape and see if I'm wrong in February, but I feel like he's going to be a big piece or an integral piece to the puzzle of what we do, because I do think we're going to probably roll about 8 to 10 deep over time. I think it's going to be a deep bench. We're going to rotate players, keep people fresh. We're not going to have like the 6 or 7 people that Houston roll out that are like lights out good all the time, and that's all they play. I know they had injuries last season. So that's why I feel like we're at right now. And we're going to see, I think we're going to see, by the time people are opening presents in December, we're going to have a really good idea of this team is legit or not. I think the pre-Big 12 slate will show us, because we kind of, before the season last year, Ben was like, yeah, four conference wins. And we were all 4 or 5 conference wins.
Yeah, we were all there.
We were all there. And if we paid attention to what transpired before the season, before the Big 12 season began, there were glimpses that this could be a little bit better than that. We just didn't. I don't think a lot of us paid attention to that, or saw that, or foresaw that. So, I think this is going to be the same thing this year. We'll see what happens during our pre-conference schedule. We'll see with our own eyes if we're gelling, if we're working together, if we're playing it selfishly, if the defense that Dawkins wants to play like he's wanted for the last 8-10 years happens. We'll see what happens. We just need to hit 500. We'll probably get into the NCAA tournament.
Just think of it from the guard perspective, the two expected starting guards. I mean, what if Darius Johnson cuts down on his turnovers this year? What if what if Jalen Sellers is able to improve his 3-point shooting, which he has absolutely proven that he can be a good 3-point shooter from a percentage standpoint in the past. He just wasn't much last year. It's like, I mean, we're talking about like in a stacked basketball conference, two players that could easily be, excuse me, not easily. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to strike that word from the record, but two players that have the capability of being an all conference type of player in the conference that we're in. And I can say that with a straight face because they have the experience and they have the ability to possibly be that. But so that's just two players. I'm not even mentioning,
Benny Williams and
freshmen.
Yeah.
What's that?
Even without freshmen, Benny Williams and like all of those other guys that are coming in too.
Exactly. We've got a lot of talent on this roster. And I mean, the player that was supposed to start his senior year of high school in Theum coming in here. I mean, he's still a projected, first round draft pick in most NFL or NBA mock drafts in 2026 right now. So, I mean, that we're talking about potential there. I mean, we've got a highly touted, center coming in here that can make a big impact on this team as well. And we haven't even seen him step foot on a college court yet. And so we've got a lot of talent on this roster, and how they can come together is going to be a very interesting thing as we move forward. And I can't wait to see how it does come together.
Yeah. So for me, I think, at the end of the day, I do think Mikey Williams will get some play early on and throughout the season, just simply for the wow factor of social media. Johnny Dawkins is going to, and UCF, but more specifically, Johnny Dawkins needs good pub. We talked about his contract and everything else. So yes, we need to win, and he needs good pub, and Mikey Williams provides that. I do think, where I was going to go with this is just the fact that we have like an 8-guard rotation. I do think, I'm serious. We brought in like 7-8 guards. So, and guys that can play the 3-4, combo. We've got combo guards. We've got 3. Yeah. There's just a lot of guards. So, I expect us to run heavy rotations. I expect us to play that brand of defense. We played a lot of press defense. Johnny Dawkins got his defense last year, and it kept us in a lot of games with guys that had, more star power. I expect to really go all in on that this year defensively. And I think because of that, Mikey Williams will get more minutes than he would normally if he was even the 3rd or 4th guard in a normal starting rotation. So we're going to go small ball this year. And I think because of that, he's going to get, his time on the court. But either way, it's going to be a boon for UCF, especially with Dior on there too. They were TikTok stars before together on the AAU circuit. And I think UCF and Johnny Dawkins, and if his agent is worth the salt, we'll be making sure that Johnny Dawkins is taking advantage of that exposure as well. So,
and to your point, we've sold more season tickets than any basketball program in UCF history. So fans are excited about this season. They really want to see how this team Mikey Williams being one of the headliners of that, I think, just seeing how it's going to come together and how it's going to perform on the court. And man, I hope they exceed our wildest expectations. It would really be fun. And with a 20 game conference schedule, it's just going to be interesting to say the least.
Yep. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. And, we've got plenty of hoops to talk later on this season, but that's exciting news for UCF, and talk a little listener love. As you guys know, I like to give a shout out to new subscribers. We had a few subscribers on here. I can't always see who it is that's subscribing, both across the podcast channels that we have and also against YouTube. But I do see two of you. So I want a quick shout out to, I hope I'm saying this right, Doncha Montgomery and Tyler Strickland. Welcome to the family. We appreciate it. We saw some comments as well on the channel. So thank all of you for following along with us as we close in on year one, and hopefully move into year two and many, many more. So shout out to both of you, and go Knights. So one more I do want to call out to Wonder UCF said, just found your podcast, go Knights. Shout out to you as well. You didn't show up in the subscribers, but I think you are a subscriber. But either way, keep those comments coming as well. All right. Moving on. I think it's time, since Alan decided not to show up this week. So that means Josh gets the dub. Josh's sometimes funny fact of the week.
All
Josh?
Right, so, yeah, thanks. It's interesting. We all probably know a pretty famous alumni from the University of New Hampshire, the opponent coming up in just about a week.
Sorry.
What?
Sorry. I kind of gave it
away.
No.
It's okay. And you're fine. I have to now cut if we're going to put this as a story. Look at you. You know that the most famous University of New Hampshire football related alumni connected to the UCF is
George O'Leary.
Correct. There are two other alumni of the University of New Hampshire that both led P4 teams last year. And now one of them is the offensive coordinator under the other. Who are the coaches? And what are their collegiate positions while playing football for University of New Hampshire?
Oh, wow. You're like giving us two extremely difficult questions.
Yeah, it's like
the last part of that took it to a whole nother level.
Start with the first one. If you know college football, you probably know this, and I can get you some hints.
All right, hints, please.
Okay, so the coaches were in separate conferences last year, but the same conference this year, both the teams they coached and the teams they are currently coaching now.
That didn't help. And didn't you say one worked for the other now? So, yeah, obviously.
One is now the offensive coordinator underneath.
Is this a TCU coach or something? TCU offensive coordinator used to... it's like Baylor and TCU. They have like
I know who you're talking about, and no, because he's not.
I was thinking Bryles. I was thinking of Kendall Bryles.
Yeah. I was actually thinking Dave Aranda there for a minute because they just changed OCs. So I don't know.
But yeah,
I'll make it a little easier for you. It's a pretty popular team in the Big Ten.
So Michigan,
or Ohio
because
State.
They just lost Harbaugh. No, it's not Ohio State.
No, that can't be Ohio State.
It's got to be Michigan. Am I right on the team? No.
Nope. You both got it wrong.
I got nothing.
You've got Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan. It is Ohio State. So Ryan Day's one of them.
Ryan Day, yeah. And
so Ben, you were right.
I was right. See, you just dismissed me right away, Roger. Like made me feel like I didn't know what I was talking about.
Look at that influence. So Ryan Day, yes, was a graduate of the University of New Hampshire. Who is his offensive coordinator? Who was also at the University of New Hampshire? who was the head coach of another team just last year.
Was it an Illinois head coach? Or
I don't know who the offensive coordinator is.
I don't know, dude.
Chip Kelly.
Oh, wow.
Chip Kelly.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize he moved to Ohio State.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So Chip Kelly and Ryan Day.
That's a funny fact. That's not sometimes funny there, Josh. That's funny.
Yeah. So I'll give you the positions because I thought this was funny. Chip Kelly was a DB in college. I didn't get that. Ryan Day.
I think he might need to run a few more stadium steps.
He might. I just found it interesting because people's positions when they play college from in any sport.
Well, I mean,
and you see them 30 years later.
As a DB, though, you need to know offenses, right?
That's fair. I mean, yeah, that's fair. So, and Ryan Day was a quarterback and a linebacker.
Wow.
So yeah, that's
awesome.
I can see him being a linebacker, not so much quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And this is also why you don't always trust generative AI. I looked this up on ChatGPT and then I did my own research. Do you want to know? Do you want to know who ChatGPT thought? Do I still have it up? I do. Do you want to know who ChatGPT thought were a University of New Hampshire alumni?
Sure.
Tom Brady. We all know that's wrong. John Lynch.
That's wrong.
And that's wrong. That was only the football ones, but I'm like, I saw Tom Brady. I'm like, did he get a graduate degree? Was he there first? No, I mean,
definitely not.
So he was definitely not there for a graduate degree. His graduate degree was kicking Drew Bledsoe out of his position as the quarterback of the New England Patriots.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you guys will allow me to quickly step out of my lane, because I know this is Josh's lane here, but I got a little trivia that's UCF related of current events that are going on right now too. See if you guys know. So the Little League World Series is going on right now, and obviously, my son plays baseball. We're very much into the Little League World Series, and we're also into it because a local team in Lake Mary is the Florida representative, the Southeast representative, and they're still in it. They're one of, I think they're as of tonight, 2 wins away from the World Series championship. And so that's really exciting. So my trivia question is, do either of you know the connection that this Lake Mary team has to UCF? Ooh. It's a very direct connection. So
isn't it is it Mike Maroff? No. Or Kyle?
No, that's a great guess. I guarantee you Mike Maroff has probably been a pitching coach to a few of these guys, but who's also he's also given some pitching lessons to my son as well.
Don't we have one of the coaches kid is on the team or something like that?
You're very close. I mean, you're pretty much there, except for it's more relatives of the coaches. It's one of the kids are on the team, but I'll just let you guys know. So one of the star players on the Lake Mary team, and it's a team full of stars, but their catcher is Landon Bono.
Oh, Ryan Bono.
Which of course, Kyle Bono is his uncle. Ryan Bono is his dad, and so Ryan is a coach, assistant coach on the Lake Mary team. Kyle Bono are one of the best, a UCF Hall of Famer himself. He is one of the best pitchers of all time at UCF, and so his nephew Landon is a great player for the Lake Mary team, and hopefully they continue to push towards winning the World Series. It'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah. But awesome. What's interesting, we just need Justin Pope to have like
I know, right?
Or sister, right?
Fox out there.
I will tell you, and if you haven't watched this team, I got to watch them on the flight up here, and the gentleman who drove a ball that probably wouldn't have landed for that 3-run home run.
Yeah.
If you only saw that clip, this kid, and I love this kid looked in 2 balls that became, that were balls.
Yeah.
And he squatted down and did like the Juan Soto,
he did the Juan
shake.
Soto thing. I think his name's KJ something, or I can't remember his last name. His first name's KJ. Yeah.
And the other team took out the pitcher who was 2-0, and I felt bad for the kid that gave up the home run. I mean, I think he left like a curveball, something hanging.
Yeah, second pitch of the game, and he just drives it like a missile to center left field. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, and it's not like even today, I believe when we're recording this today, they won again against Hawaii, and it was man on third, and the pitcher with up 1 run, and the pitcher closed it out. So they're fun to watch. You have Ben is right. So if we get this out tomorrow, you'll probably watch them tomorrow. They're playing Henderson, Nevada, if I remember correctly. And if they beat Henderson, they'll get 2 more games because they will either
Texas for the U.S. championship.
Yeah, that Texas team, which hasn't been beaten yet. It
was the only team to beat Lake Mary, so that's
correct.
That's the Little League World Series update. But that's the connection that this team has to UCF, and it's they're an exciting team. So we're getting down to it, and I'm glad that they're in the final. A small amount of teams that are in it.
Yeah. All right, so hopefully we're offering some of those kids. Well, so baseball is yet another sport that Alan does not watch. So let's get our quick update on sports that Alan does not watch.
So the UCF women's soccer team completed.
That was last week.
Yeah,
John.
why? That's last. What are we doing? What's going on?
UCF women's soccer ranked number what?
That's UCF men's soccer. You know what? I don't see any updates here that I can do.
There is an update there. UCF women's soccer won 5-1 this week and are now 1-0.
Last week, I put it in. We did that last week.
No, you didn't, because I updated the notes. And this came straight from the Big 12 today. So we'll play Utah Valley August 22nd at UCF at 5:30 p.m. on ET on ESPN Plus. Sunday, August 25th at Florida at 6 p.m. ET on the SEC Network Plus. So I guess not only do you have the SEC Network, but you have the SEC Network Plus. The league, the Big 12 has a pretty good women's soccer league, also women's basketball. They are 27-1 through the first week. OSU, TCU, and BYU all had top 25 wins, and BYU, TCU, and OSU, surprisingly not, are ranked as well. Do we want to try women's volleyball? All right, I got it. Women's volleyball is a tough league for us as well. Kansas is the conference's preseason favorite. They're currently ranked number 13. The Jayhawks start their highest start in the poll since 2017. Now, the big thing here is I think UCF women's volleyball, who's used to basically running the AAC towards the latter part of that, they've definitely stepped up their level of competition. BYU is ranked number 16. Arizona State comes in number 17. And Baylor is ranked at number 23. And TCU, Houston, K-State, and Iowa State are receiving votes as the UCF women's volleyball season is coming to tip off here pretty soon. And, unfortunately, UCF is not ranked in the poll. So a little surprising. UCF fans have to get used to the new competition. And, we'll see how it all works out. Josh is furiously typing at me right now.
We need to run the tape.
I can't
run the tape.
I can't mention what he says on there. Oh,
yes, I said I did the FAU game last week.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your next comment. So I think he's getting a little tired because it's 12 midnight on Wednesday. But that's it for this week. That'll be a wrap for this week. Super excited for next week. Tune in. We've got some guests that are going to be joining us to help us celebrate season 2, ringing in season 2 of the Knighted Ones. We will also, be kicking off the football season, which is also exciting. That'll be game week the next time we record. It won't be game day, but it will be game week. So we'll talk about that next week as well. And, check out, and we'll have more information on that live stream of the game as we have some of our compatriots here from the Knighted Ones that will be live streaming during the game, giving you their reaction. So I cannot say whether that will be E for everyone or not, because that's a whole different level. I know based on our text thread, we'll bring back text talk starting for the not this next first episode of season 2, but episode 2 of season 2. And I can tell you, we cannot put everything that we put in the text talk on, and talk about it on the pod. So it'll be really interesting to see how that turns out. So tune in for that one. All right, that's it for us this week. Thank you so much for following, listening, subscribing. Our community is growing. We appreciate everything that you do. Continue to comment. Make sure you're giving us feedback. When I flub, or when I say something or write something in there that Josh 100% thinks he said last week, make sure you tell us whether he was right or I was right. And go Knights and
charge on.
Did you
Let's
know
go,
that
baby.
halls and walls and alls and calls rhyme with